Welcome to Tencent Dialogue, a place to learn from the great minds of our time. Today's program is jointly sponsored by Tencent Research Institute, Tencent News, and We Read. Tencent Research Institute is a young enterprise think tank dedicated to studying how technology can help change our society. Tencent Dialogue aims to build academic bridge and learn from great minds. We focus on global economy and sustainable development. Today, we have two distinguished guests with us, Mr. David Wallenstein and Mr. Tony Fadell. David is Tencent Chief Exploration Officer and is dedicated to drive Tencent exploration in new areas. Welcome. Tony is an engineer, designer, and entrepreneur. We're very familiar with smartphones, iPhone, and iPad. Tony just published his new book, Build. Congratulations. So our topic for today is how to deal with complicated environments and keep doing the right thing. In the past 10 years, with the development of smartphones and mobile internet, technology has been fully integrated into our lives, bringing more convenience. So what kind of inspiration can we get from design behind the products? At the same time, we all face global warming and extreme weather. In some part of the world, there is still a shortage of food, energy, and water. How can we use technology to help those people? Today, David and Tony would like to share with us on how to create value and do the right things. Welcome you both. Tony, so you were in China some 20 years ago. Could you tell us a story at that time?
Ni hao. Yes, I was definitely in China 20 years ago, just at the beginning of when Apple started to move its production and some design from other countries into China. And so I had been going there first for iPod and then for iPhone. And then I continued to go there, even with Nest. And we had factories actually working for us at Nest in China. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth from Silicon Valley to various cities in China for building products, designing products together with the Chinese, and spent a lot of time helping to understand the culture and how we could work best together. And that was during my days at Nest and Apple. But then even just recently, just before the pandemic, I was in China and speaking about our global plastics crisis and talking about solutions with the Chinese government there, as well as other industry leaders, to figure out how we might be able to tackle this plastic production problem, plastic waste problem, just as early as 2019. So I hope to come back to China soon. But yes, I've had a lot of great times and a lot of great experiences in China with working side by side with the Chinese people.
Great. Tony, I'm gonna be asking you a lot of questions these days, and thank you so much for your warm welcome, Juanita. That was very nice, really kick things off here. First, for the China audience, I'd like everyone to know, we're really lucky to have Tony today. He's written probably the most important business book in the Western world this year. And, he's a very global guy. I know him from his Silicon Valley days, but he's also spending a lot of time in Europe. And I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley in Europe. And so he's written a book that has appealed to people, not just in the Silicon Valley kind of tech sector, but also, around the world, including Europe. And I know it was very important for Tony to make sure that Build was available in Chinese and, addressing the China market. And now here we are, we're doing the first interview with Tony for the Chinese market. So thanks to Tony for choosing Tencent as a platform to do that. And, this gives us a chance to really dive in and think about Tony's ideas, not just from his global perspective, but also, maybe the first question can be, it was important to you, Tony, to have the book available in China. Maybe just tell us a little more about how he felt his book applies best to the China market and why it was so important to him to make sure it was translated into Chinese and now getting introduced to China. So it'd be great to hear more from Tony on that.
Well, David, first, thank you so much for having me on. This is great. And it's wonderful to be literally speaking the first time for the Chinese audience with you about Build. So thank you again for this opportunity. And since we've been friends for so long, it's always fun to chat too. As far as the Chinese market goes, for the Chinese public goes for the Build, look, what I've learned through my travels and through my 35 plus years in working with teams all around the world. I didn't just work in Silicon Valley. I worked with teams in Europe. I've worked with teams in Asia, Japan, Korea, China. What I've come to realize is that human nature, that we all want the best for our kids. We all want to be healthy. We want to be safe. We want certain things in our careers and stuff like that. Human nature is the same around the world, regardless of whether you're speaking English or Mandarin, or you're speaking French or any other language. Human nature is the same. And what I wanted to do with Build was really touch on those human nature elements. And I really wanted to get those to the biggest audience out there building things in the world. And China is by far the largest country with the biggest population building things on this planet today. And so for Build to get this message out to all of those builders, all those creators in China, I think is essential. And I've had such a good time working with the teams there over the last 20 years that it just felt like they gave me so much, those teams gave me so much and helped me become who I am today, that I wanted to also be able to give back to them.
Tony, so you said in your new book, it is very important to confront failure and cultivate learning style of practice and growth. How can we implement this? Do you have any suggestions for the young people? Thank you.
Sure. How do we embrace failure and do it positively? Look, when we go to school in life, we are trained one way. We are trained to go to learn from our teachers, do our homework, take our tests, and we either pass that class because we've passed the tests or we failed the tests. And we do that for years and years and years. We'll do that for 12, 15, 16, maybe even 20 or more years, just going through that same regimen of getting taught, doing homework, doing tests, and then hopefully passing. So for the first part of our life, we learn that the world works that way. But actually, what happens after you graduate and you get into the working world, it works totally differently. If you really want to be a success in life, it's exactly opposite of the way school is. No one has a guide to life. There's no teaching mechanism or multiple choice test in life for what you're going to do. What is it you want to do, how you do it, who you do it with, what are the things you're building. So you have to remember that your life before work is very different than life when you are in work. And what I've always come to realize is it's called do, fail, learn. In other words, you do something that you're curious about, you try to build something. Most likely the first times you try, you're going to fail. And then if you try long enough and learn from your mistakes, hopefully you'll get to success. That is how life works in all regards. And if you really want to be successful, you're going to have to take risks and try things that no one has seen before, because you're going to build things and create things the world's never seen before. So there are no experts in it. So we have to do to learn. And if you don't do, no one's going to teach you this stuff. So let me give you an example. An example of failure that happens to everyone. Everybody goes through this example. Learning to walk. What happens is you try to walk for the first time when you're a baby, and maybe you sit up, and then maybe you stand up but then fall over, and then maybe you take your first step but it doesn't get there and you fall over. We learn to walk by probably failing to walk 1,000 times. So we already have that in us. We learn lots of things, how to play sports, we play different things, but learning to walk is so fundamental, even talking, that we have to learn through failure. Well, that is how life works. And even more importantly, when we're young, we have an environment around us, our parents, our friends, who are sitting there, even when we fail to walk, they're going, good job, try again. I know you can do it, try again, do it again. That's exactly the kind of environment we need to have inside of our work organizations. We need to encourage risk-taking and have to encourage that, understand that when we take risk, we're going to fail, but as long as we keep going, we don't truly fail. We're learning and we continue to do more things along that same line to finally get to success. I'm not talking about failure when you didn't do your work or you were derelict in your duties in some way. I'm talking about failure because you're trying something, you've tried your best, you put your most effort in it, got everyone involved, and it still didn't work for whatever reasons. Either your assumptions were wrong, your experiments were wrong, whatever it is, and you go back to the drawing board and learn again. Failure is the way we learn. Failure is the way we innovate on this planet. And we have to have an environment that allows us to fail when we are trying to do the right things with the right level of effort and those kinds of things. If we don't get there and we don't take those risks, someone else will be the leader and we will be the fast follower. So which is it? Leader who's going to do and fail, or are you going to be a fast follower who's just going to watch the leaders, will never be number one, but will never necessarily understand failure or how to do things and understand the world of innovation and what it takes to innovate?
So David is back. Please, David.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, great. You talk about this need to take risks and to try new things to establish a leadership position. I find in practice, for example, having worked in Tencent for over 22 years now, that there's a lot of gray area in this, and I want to get your view on it. And you've done startups and you've done the biggest of the big companies and the biggest projects and the most successful projects. So you've seen it all, right? So on one hand, we say, a company's got to focus. What's that key thing? What's that key product? And you got to really nail it. And if you nail it, you may have an opportunity for long-term greatness. So on one hand, you're always getting this push towards focus, and on the other hand, then we're saying we got to take risks and try new things. And what I want to ask you about is these gray areas in, let's say, larger corporations where there's so many things that a company is focused on, and yet there are teams where the boss may not be fully aware of their product or what they're working on. And they're like, well, do we play it safe? Because last time we got reviewed a year ago, they told us to do this, but we think there's a huge opportunity here. Do they go stick their necks out and try to do something ambitious? Or do they kind of play it safe and muddle around? And,
Okay.
This happens all over the world in every company. But what would be your guidance to a leader in that kind of position where they're in an important team, but maybe not the most important team at that moment in terms of executive attention and everyone talking about them? How do you figure out, do I innovate or do I play it safe and do an okay job?
Okay, well, what you've described is the difference between a number one and a number two in the market, whether that's a big market, a small market, a big company, or a small company. Look, if you want to be number one and stay number one, that means you have to continually innovate and you have to try new things. That might be taking risks in your current product lines or creating new product lines the world's never seen before. But if you want to perpetually try to be number one, but you're not innovating, well, you're sooner or later going to lose that number one slot, or number two is going to turn into number three. You have to be growing and changing and learning. I don't care whether you're not the pinnacle project for that executive that day or that month or that quarter. You have to understand that if you're a leader, you need to lead, and you can't be a babysitter. You have to be a parent. And that parent has to keep challenging themselves, their team, and bringing new things to the customers. If you don't, you're going to end up in also-ran. Just because you hit your numbers that's an historical thing. That is not a predictor of future success. You got lucky, or maybe you did the right things because you did innovate, but you can't rest on your laurels. I remember when we did every single iPod, especially the first one. We did the iPod. Okay, great. People were like, well, thinking it was a wonderful thing. Within minutes after we did a launch, we were back in the design studio working on the next generation iPod. Literally that same day, after we announced the first generation iPod, We were already working on the second generation one. And the first generation didn't even ship to customers yet. So it's always about challenging yourself, leapfrogging yourself if you're number one. But if you're number two, you got to find a way to leapfrog number one. Okay. But if you're number one and you're just stagnating because it's easy and you're going to get your bonus and you're making your numbers, sooner or later, you're going to lose that ability to innovate. You're going to lose that cutting edge. You're going to start losing the great people on your team because you're not doing great stuff. And you're going to start losing those customers who believed in you because they believed you brought innovation. So sure, you might be able to take a quarter off, but it ain't going to be 2 or 3 because technology moves so damn fast. And I don't care what the senior executives will be. They'll come down for you if you miss your numbers, right? So you have to make sure that you have part of a rational story, which is numbers, but then an emotional story, which says innovation. And if you don't have the combination of emotional innovation with rational numbers when you're in a maintenance business, forget it. Sooner or later that you're going to crest that wave and you're not going to ride another wave into success.
Let me ask you just to drill down into this a little bit. You know, you've been a tough leader yourself, I'm sure, and you've worked with some tough leaders and you know some tough leaders. Are you a fan of what you might call kind of bottom-up management? And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of teams or leaders that may be somewhere in a larger-ish corporation who are constantly proactively giving ideas to their executive team or their leadership team. Are you a big fan of this style of management? So you're not waiting for the big boss to come around and tell you what they wanted, and if not, you're kind of cruising, but you're actually proactively, even if you weren't asked, you know, what's going on, you're always pushing your leadership to say, we should be doing this, we should be doing this. Now that could be risky. What's your views on that? Do you think that's the right way to go if you're in a larger corporation?
It's a great question. Look, if you are a leader, you are going to lead with ideas and new things. You're not just going to complain about top management. You're going to lead and say, I have a problem, and here is a solution or a proposed solution to this problem. If you're not a leader, otherwise, you're just a manager and you're taking orders. So are you someone who innovates? Are you someone who wants to change the world or create amazing things that customers want to be amazing? Well, you better get those ideas, because the best people who understand the products and the customers better be the teams building it. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're just order takers? This is not a manufacturing line. When you're innovating, it's not like you're sitting on a manufacturing line, make another one, and it's the same thing over and over. A lot of people think that, and they're waiting for somebody on high. When you're making innovation, it's not production. Production's a different thing than innovation and creating new things. So you got to think in a new way. And the only way you're going to think like a leader is to be a leader and trying to think of the product that you're in as, you know, your CEO. Don't just be an engineer if you're designing something or, you know, or engineering something. Think about the business ramifications. Think about your customers. Think about how you do prioritization of features. Think about the voice of the customer. You should always be thinking outside of your discipline, because the more you think outside of your discipline and understand sales or marketing or legal or finance or any HR, or all kinds of different, the better leader you will become, the more understanding you have of how these other teams work, so you can work them back into your thinking and also train your team on them. So you have to always be bringing new ideas to the forefront. I always loved teams that would come to me and challenge me with new ideas. I challenge them with ideas for sure, but I want to challenge back, because the leaders who are at the top levels respect those who bring ideas up. Now, sometimes those leaders on top will, and hopefully will, acknowledge that those are great ideas. I've worked for people in the past who I bring the ideas to, and then they take the ideas and say, oh, I have this great idea in 24 hours or 48 hours later. That does happen, but guess what? That's better that they're parroting your ideas, because sooner or later people will figure out whose ideas they originated with, even if the head honcho, the head leader, is taking your ideas. Don't be afraid of that. Continue to create ideas, suggestions, ways of making your jobs and the products that you create better, and it will be seen sooner or later by people up up on high. Otherwise, you're just on a production line and you're getting told what to do. And what fun is that? That's no fun. I would never want to be told what to do. I want to tell other people what I'm doing and the reasons why and convincing them, not the other way around.
But what you're describing, Tony, it sounds to me like the way to approach a job, whether you want to rise up in a large corporation or you want to do your own startup, because you're talking about really taking ownership for what you're doing and learning about all the functions. You talk about a lot in your book too. But would you say like this is kind of, if someone was a young person now and they think, well, 10 years from now, I'd love to have my own startup, but I want to learn the ropes at a large company, a Tencent or whoever, right? Is this exactly the approach that you would kind of recommend if that was your future pathway? Own your function, get to know everything around you, and learn, and be fully responsible for it and proactive with your leadership about what should happen next. I mean, this sounds like the perfect recipe for training, in my view. Would you agree with that?
I totally. And you have to go and whether you're in a big company or small company, get into the other functions, get into product management, get into the other things and really understand it and understand how they do it. Because if you ever want to create your own company, you're going to have to know all of those functions in detail. You're going to have to understand what marketing is and what the difference between PR is and marketing communications and product marketing and marketing creative and social media presence. Like in marketing communications, the number of disciplines I can think of right now are 12 to 15 different disciplines inside of marketing and communications. Inside of engineering, we know there's tons and tons of differentiation, legal as well, finance as well. Get to understand how these other teams work around you so that one day when you go, if you want to go build your own company or you're a high level executive in a large company, you understand what these functions are. That's what's going to be a prerequisite for you to move up that ladder, is to understand what everyone else does and try to integrate them in, not just because you're the greatest engineer or the great salesperson. That's not going to be good enough. If you want to rise throughout the hierarchy, you're going to want to know those other things, especially if you're going to create your own startup.
Could you talk a little bit, Tony, about how you started? A little bit personal, but why not? You've laid out a lot in your book. And I'll ask you to do it here, but how did, just talking about this now, how did you start? And at what moment could you feel that your career was kind of moving up? And how would you relate your own activity in the corporations you worked at early on, to kind of saying, look, I'm going to be more than just that function I started with and really starting to grow with your leadership capabilities. Can you reflect on your own experience in this respect? Like, what did you kind of do wrong initially? And what did you start getting right?
Okay, great question. So first, it should be known that I had startups ever since high school. So I had a startup in high school, I had a couple in college, and my first real job was at General Magic, right? General Magic is a company trying to create the iPhone 15 years too early. Everybody should watch it. Even in China, you should watch it. It's called General Magic, the movie. It's all about creating the iPhone 15 years too early. That was the first job I ever took. All before that, I created my jobs. And then when I went off to Philips, leaving General Magic, I went to Philips Electronics. I created my job. At Apple, I created my job. At Nest, obviously, I created the company with Matt Rogers, and I created my job there. So I always look at it as I'm going to a large organization. The first time I went to it, which was General Magic, it was not large, but it was 30 people at the time. It grew to 200 or so. I took a job and I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that job. And I took the lowest job on the totem pole. I got paid nothing. I was a grunt. I was 21, 22 years old. And I was just learning from my heroes and talking to everybody around to do that. Then when it came to Philips, right after General Magic, I went with a business plan and said, I want to build a division for you to create mobile computing products, and had basically a business plan lined up, how much finance, what's the team look like. So I went there and they said, yes, we want you to do that. The same thing happened again at Apple with iPod. So all the time, if you're going to a large organization, you should treat it as if you're going to go and make a job for yourself and carve out what it is. Learn what you can in your first job. But when you go rise up through the ranks or whatever, start creating what it is you want to see and see if you can people engage in that. And maybe you can start your own project inside of it. Again, learning resources, learning what HR and all these other people do, and then ultimately one day getting it out. So the fallback is that you have to do the job you're given. Okay, if you're just out of school, you got to do the job you're giving. Too many people I see like, I just came from this prestigious university. Now I need this huge title and this huge salary, and I'm the expert. No way. There is no way you're an expert unless you've had 10 years experience doing what you're doing. You're just starting. And take a piece of humble pie, right? Eat that piece of humble pie and go, look, no, I don't know everything. I'm going to go and get my PhD in whatever it is. Even if I got a PhD, that's not a PhD in life and business and career. That's just a PhD at a certain topic in school. You need to get out. You're not an expert. You're going to do stuff that the world's never seen before. So you're not an expert just like everyone else on the team is. If you're innovating, you're doing things that the world's never seen. So you're not an expert. Embrace that. But at the same time, use that as a tool to learn, just like you did in school, talking to a lot of people, writing things down, putting ideas down, and trying to become an expert in this new field. And you're going to have to learn by doing and fail and all that stuff. Again, you got to do the job you're given, but you can always go outside of it, learn more, contribute more, bring more ideas in, and try to make it your own, as well as if people are working for you, make it their own too. So you're building this cohesive team around this mission and vision. And maybe the higher ups will see it. Maybe you'll be able to build a business case, not just make an interesting idea for a product, but an interesting business case that could turn into the next great software app or hardware software platform or who knows what. But you always have to come from, I want to contribute more than the job that I've been given. I want to be able to be a business owner, even inside of a large company, right? There are business owners inside of large companies, just like Tencent. So you have to come with that mindset, but also understand you are learning and there's no such thing as an expert. Bring your expertise, but you're never an expert when it comes to innovating.
So David, you have been concerned about the impact of climate change. I have read your book, AI for Few. So that's a marvelous book. Why are you so interested in these topics? Do you think technology can change our future?
Sure. So yeah, we can pivot a little bit to climate change, and we'll direct some of that back to Tony very soon too. So, Tony's been talking about the importance of innovation, the importance of leadership, the importance of driving teams of people and technology to achieve great things. And, I've been with Tencent for 22 years now, and I could see all the things we could accomplish as a company when we got things right. Built amazing products, entered new business areas. Many people watching this know how much Tencent has grown and gone into areas like finance and so on and so forth over the years that we weren't necessarily a big player in earlier. So many people have been on the ride with us. But I started thinking more and more as our company grew that we needed specifically to focus on the greatest challenges ahead of us. And I know Tony feels the same way, so we're going to jump right in real soon with him. But to me, I just started reading about this question, like, what are the greatest challenges? I may have my opinion, someone may disagree with me. How could I do a little more research so that I would feel that I had the best idea of what the greatest challenges are? And when I started thinking about that, I just started thinking about human health and human life very fundamentally. So I started thinking, well, first of all, I guess we don't want to get sick. It's very painful personally. And when a family member is sick, that's painful, and it's not good for economies. Basically, nothing good comes out of someone being sick, and it has this huge impact on everything around us. So we want to keep humans healthy. And then what drives human health? Other than health care, what are the things that would take away from human health? And I started thinking about very simple things like agriculture, like food that we have to eat, water, which is very obvious, and energy that keeps us warm and keeps our whole economy flowing, and kind of removes humans from all the other species. When you add energy, now we start doing really powerful things like having this conversation over great distances that the other species would, they may get access to a little food. A lion can eat something and a bird can drink a little water, but they can't harness electricity the way we can, and then do all these amazing things with it, from robotics to communications and everything else. And I started researching that and understanding how close of a relationship they had, and that these basic needs are basically the primary drivers of climate change, whether it's our energy system, and that flows through transportation, flows through space heating, space cooling, all of the things we need, water treatment, agricultural production, whether it's livestock. And then what was very interesting is the more I started thinking about that, I'm like Tony, think about technology all the time. I started thinking about all the things that technology can do to address these challenges. And I think it's a really huge opportunity ahead of us. Maybe I could use that point there now to pivot to Tony, because it may or may not show up in the book, but Tony, for the audience's benefit, is a very active, I should say a very, very active global investor, first of all. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Tony, please do.
Sure.
First point. Second point is, in particular, about climate-related startups. And so he is living this every day, supporting teams around the world, tackling challenges, in a similar vein. We invest in different companies together, things like that. So, Tony, how do you see this moment that we're at right now, where we've got these massive climate-related challenges, and then you've got all this technology that's being developed, and is it being effectively applied to climate? And how do you see all this stuff playing out currently at this point in history?
All right, well, let's get into it. So
Yeah.
first and foremost, the audience should know that I am a direct investor in companies around the world, over 220, 230 companies directly invested into those companies. Yeah, that's a lot. Plus lots of LP positions in many VCs around the world too. So except for Africa, we have investments on every continent except for Africa. Probably 40 to 50 of those investments are directly climate related, and probably another 50 are indirectly climate related. So we are always looking at solutions in that climate space. Now, this isn't something that just started. I've been working on climate solutions since really 2008, 2009. One of the biggest ones that I worked on was Nest. Nest was all about helping, conserve energy in the home, and helping, to save 25, 30, 50%, even in some homes, the amount of energy you're using on heating and cooling through a smart thermostat and some connectivity to the electrical grid. So this is something that I've been involved with, something I've been looking at and really immersed in every day for at least a decade or more. It was pretty much, how can I say, crickets. Most people, after the green tech revolution of 2006 to 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, green tech 1.0 kind of died. A lot of people were trying a lot of things, but there was not necessarily the need. People were doing the right things technically, but people were like, yeah, this climate change thing, yeah, I don't know if it's real or whatever, or they just said, oh, it's too expensive. Well, fast forward to just before the pandemic with Greta Thunberg, and then the pandemic, it woke up a lot of people to the climate change stuff. And just before the pandemic, I'm sitting there on this big portfolio going, okay, I know climate change is happening. Why isn't the investment community, why isn't everybody being focused on this? I've been working on it at that point, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, depending on how you count. And nobody was there, it was crickets. Well, somewhere along the line, just during the pandemic, I started getting calls from businesses going, we need help with this climate change problem. What do you have in your portfolio? I had VCs calling me going, what do you got in your portfolio? We need to invest in it. We need to get green. We need to figure out climate crisis solutions. So it was pretty interesting what's happened over the last kind of 24 months, really, about how the intensity around the space has grown dramatically. And I would say it's for getting people to call me and saying, what do you got? Businesses too. That's really unusual. And nothing like having potential customers calling you saying, what do you got? We want to use it. Because what I have come to realize is that we have technology, and in some cases, technology that was even invented in the early 1900s that can be deployed today to fix the climate crisis. What we need to have is the will. And that's the nice thing. I'm living in Europe mostly. I'm seeing the will. We're creating, EV factories, electric vehicle factories. We're creating battery factories. But as soon as we make battery factories, the EU government says, if you make a battery factory, you better have a battery recycling factory because we're not going to permit it. So for every battery factory, manufacturing factory, you got to have a battery recycling factory. Otherwise, we're not going to give you the permits and the grants to do it. So I'm seeing things like the carbon border tax in the EU happening. I'm seeing all kinds of other initiatives happening. So we're starting to see in certain countries the will for climate change and fixing it. We definitely have the technology. What we need is more and more people and more effort behind it, but it is not for lack of technology. It's just for lack of attention. And now we're starting to see that happen in places like the EU. We're seeing that in China as well. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to swarm around it. Now, are we going to keep it to 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees C? I don't know. But I do know that we have what it takes. We just need to go and do it. And we are starting to see a lot of mobilization there, which is giving me a lot of hope. And I'm seeing a lot of a lot of new customers coming into the companies that we funded, which is the mission. The mission is not about making money. The mission is about solving the climate crisis. And if you can solve the climate crisis in whatever way you can, there is tons of money in it. And in fact, if you're supplanting old businesses like cement and steel, you can actually have a more profitable business doing it the green way than doing it the old traditional way that hurts the planet, that costs more, hurts the customers. Just do it the new way. So I am really happy to see kind of a win-win-win coming across all of these different companies that have climate technologies that can solve our crisis that we have created for us, frankly.
Tony, there's a lot of great points in there. I want to dig into some of it a little further. I mean, this is really important, and I wanted it to be an important part of our discussion today because you're so passionate about these issues. But the way I often think about this, in fact, it was the title of my book. I called it Re-Architecting Earth, because I believe once we put into place intelligent, let's say planetary neutral infrastructure, we're done for a while. We can scale. That means we've built the infrastructure we need to scale to 10 billion people. Maybe you can go up to 20 billion people getting the food they need, the water they need, the energy they need. That's the period we're at in human history, is like, if we can make this transition successfully, re-architecting, we're going to be in a very stable position as a human species, and maybe it will have less demand for space exploration. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, look, as far as I'm concerned, this is not the 1850s or the early 1900s where it's like, oh, I need one power plant, or I need one auto factory, or I need one road, or whatever. What we're talking about is a reboot of almost all infrastructure on this planet that has been being built over the last 150 years.
Exactly.
The opportunity is off the charts. We have to go to Industrial Revolution 2.0. That means all the things that move us, whether that's in the air, in the sea, under the sea, on the land, all of those things are going to change. All the ways we fuel those things or put energy into them is going to change. How we actually create the food we eat, those are also going to change and be revolutionized. It's a golden era. Like, everybody wished they would have built, been around in the early 1900s when the auto industry was taking off, all these energy-driven industries was taking off. We're doing that right now. It's actually better than the social mobile experience of 2008 and, of the smartphone revolution. We are now going to reboot everything: our materials, our chemicals, our energy, our transportation, our logistics. Like, everything is going to get rebuilt. And we as builders are right here at the perfect time to rebuild it. And usually making it not just green, but making more money doing it. So I can't believe the opportunity we have at hand, and I couldn't be more optimistic about where we're going to be. And yes, abundance is there. As you stated, maybe we can have 20 billion. I don't know what's the right number, but all I know is we'll have abundance. And the reason being is if we think about all the energy we as a species create on this planet, 60% of that energy is lost in inefficiencies. It is just literally thrown away, 60%. If you look at typical food statistics, 30 to 40% of all food we grow and process is wasted. 60% of energy wasted, food 30 to 40% is wasted. Come on, people, let's go and solve those wasted areas. And so we can continue to live and do the right thing and live in harmony with the planet, together with the planet, not on the planet, but with the planet. It's going to be better for everyone.
Well, this is a huge theme that we've been talking about. Actually, you've totally nailed it. You know, we're very passionate about efficiency solutions. We believe you can use a lot of software technology, artificial intelligence technologies to identify waste and to do actuation, decision-making, refine your industrial processes more intelligently, your energy systems. It's pretty exponential. Let me ask you what you think the most low-hanging fruit, exciting technologies are right now. I'm not saying they're necessarily new, but when you think of technology that can be applied to solving problems right now, what kind of gets you excited? Like that just needs to be done everywhere immediately. You can feel it, you can taste it, how it would work. Are there certain technologies that just excite you a little more than others when you think about the climate challenge we have ahead of us?
Yeah, I think what we're already moving very quickly on is, as we can see, especially in China with all the mobility manufacturers, like the amount of mobility coming out of China these days and all the different form factors, actually 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels, 1 wheel. Like there's hundreds of companies in China, you know, innovating and trying new types of things. I actually bought a little Chinese electric vehicle for one of my properties in the US. And it's fun. It's like, oh my God, this isn't a great little useful device. The innovation is there, and it's not just in transportation. So I think things like batteries and transportation, those are getting invested in. I think where we really need to look is our materials. So if we look at materials today, where are we wasting things? I look at the textile business. The textile business, in just weaving alone, we lose between 10 and 40% just from bad weaving happening. Like, how do we get rid of that waste? Get rid of that. So to me, there's all these AI technologies in the fashion industry to help us get rid of all of the waste at the time of production. We have another layer inside of fashion, which is understanding what to make. Right? We have too many of these fast fashion things that are just trashing the world with unused inventory, and then we're burning the inventory or whatever. Just in fashion alone. Materials, we just talked about textiles, but let's talk about making cement, making steel. Those are incredible CO2 production, producing industries. We can go and make much better steel and cheaper steel if we move to hydrogen and electricity. Same thing goes with concrete. Concrete is the most used building material in the world. Steel is like the third after lumber, right? We need to go after those huge industries that touch every single place on the planet. And guess what? We can make hydrogen anywhere because it just takes water and electricity. So, or in some cases, methane gas and pyrolysis to make turquoise hydrogen, which is actually not bad for the planet. So, because it doesn't create CO2. So between green hydrogen and turquoise hydrogen, getting that everywhere and revolutionizing all these industries, including fertilizer we need, those are things that may not sound sexy, but they're huge and touch everybody on this planet. There's not a place on the planet that doesn't have concrete, steel, or fertilizer. Right? Those can all be revolutionized by the hydrogen, the green or turquoise hydrogen economy that is upon us right now.
And these categories all sound very right. for China. You know, there's a lot of production and a lot of interest. So I hope people in the audience are taking notes, because there's probably some good new opportunities in there somewhere. So yeah, anyways, let me ask you about, you talked about things that are possible. How about anything that really frustrates you these days? Maybe something that you think should be worked on, a problem out there, or a technology that should be better embraced. Anything that's kind of annoying you these days, like you're just not seeing a team come out that's addressing it, or you haven't really figured out how to do it yet, but it's kind of on top of your mind these days?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think there's a solved problem that we need more will to have, which is small modular nuclear reactors, SMRs, right? I think we need to be deploying those at scale. I know that China is embracing it. I know France is embracing it. Now Germans are going to be leaving them on, given the Ukraine war and the Nord 1 and Nord 2 pipelines being down because they need energy. I think we cannot avoid nuclear. We need to look at it. There are much better technology. We have to get over our fears. Fukushima was a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 reactor. 3 Mile Island, these kinds of things, Chernobyl, these things were all old in the past. We have to remember, yes, it's a sensitive topic, but at the same time, it's what we're going to need to drive these economies, because we still don't have grid scale energy storage cheap enough, large enough, available enough yet. We're going to need baseload supply. And so it's going to take a combination of technologies. And I think SMRs are there. They have been there. We just need to literally embrace them. And hopefully China will be leading the way, showing the world how they can be used safely and effectively for really great baseload energy supply, while we, get decommissioning the natural gas and definitely the coal plants as quickly as possible.
So Tony, to confirm your view on SMRs, that would be different than fusion. Is that correct? This is another kind of
yeah, this
reaction.
is fission.
This is fission.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, as the audience probably knows, there's fission and fusion reactors. Fission reactors is what we've known on this planet until now, which is breaking an atom in two, and when it breaks, the energy is released. On the fusion side, that's when two particles come together, and then as they fuse together, energy is released, just like how the sun creates its energy, right? We've been working on fusion reactors for 50, 60 years. There are things coming, but it always feels like it's 10 to 20 years away for fusion. There are some promising developments. People are telling me that it's only an engineering problem now. I've even seen things that are desktop scale fusion reactors, literally small ones, not just big ones, because you're hearing about these billions, tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, tokamak fusion reactors. Maybe those will happen. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I hope they do. But as a stopgap, SMRs are small modular reactors that are based on fission. When we tear apart atoms, that is what has been around for many years. And they can thermally shut down themselves. They don't need extra pumps or water or any other kinds of coolant. Like literally, if they ever go critical, which means they are getting too hot, they'll actually shut themselves down. These things exist. They're out there. They can be manufactured on a manufacturing line. They're not one-off things. And I think those are the areas we should be looking at to power communities, power industrial facilities, these kinds of things. Because we are going to need that baseload supply.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Bonita, Tony, should we open up questions to the audience? Maybe mix it up a little bit, or we can always come back after that. But I think maybe give them a chance to jump in. Tony, you want to cover anything else right now, or should we go into some audience questions?
Yeah, okay, well, let's go into those questions. Let me just remind people, we're talking about the climate crisis. I think we have to think about the environmental crisis. And that's not just global warming gases like CO2 or methane, or even hydrogen can be a global warming gas. I'm also talking about our waste problem, whether that's our plastic waste problem, our fashion waste problem, our food waste problem, our energy waste problem. We need to look at all the places we are wasting, not just emitting CO2 or other global greenhouse gas emissions. We need to look at the other things, drugs in our water supply that don't actually degrade, or PFAS, forever chemicals. We need to look at all of the sources of how we're damaging the environment, not just the CO2, because it's a systemic problem and all of these things are tied together. So when we're thinking about this, we can't just think about CO2. We have to be thinking about other things. And that's even more opportunity for entrepreneurs to address and to make great new businesses around.
Okay, so Dr. Jae-Yong Ping, he's a senior advisor of SD department from Tencent. Welcome. Mr. Jai, please open your microphone and camera.
Thank you, Bonita. Such an honor to see David and Tony virtually. I have a question. I've been working as a development banker in Africa and Asia for 30 years. Since 1 year, I've been within Tencent as a strategy advisor, more on climate-related operations. We are, during my past job and the current job even, that we are often approached by scientists, sometimes innovators, saying that I have a magic solution. I can solve your problem. So some transactions are done and they are good, some are less. So the question is, at the end of the day, all of these happen randomly, by chance. I meet them, they approach me. But what would be the best systematic way or more proactive way of identifying technologies we believe, and that will solve what David says, Earth level challenges. So you're faced with so many things, new things, and you are not necessarily understand all of them. And you have resources to spend, you have to invest to support these, so what we say, climate actions. So what's the best approach to select the right technology, right company to invest?
Okay, great. Great question. And it's a pleasure to meet you. So thanks for the great question. So the way I think about it is, yes, there are tons and tons of problems everywhere you can look. There are problems that need to be solved, which is wonderful. It's an opportunity. You have to figure out what is the right thing that you want to solve and what you think is important. So the first thing is understanding the priorities of what you think is important, whether that's steel production or concrete production or food safety or food waste, these kinds of things. So try to figure out what the segments are that you think are important for your business or your family or whatever it is. You can't solve them all. And then what I always do is I go into those segments and then I go with the experts in that segment and I create kind of, here's the top technologies in here. Here's what we haven't addressed as a system inside of that certain, focal area. What are the problems that exist? What hasn't been tackled? What innovations are still customers or users wanting in that area? So I'm just trying to understand all the problems and potential technologies. And from that, I start to get a viewpoint. And then I put a call out. And this is the wonderful thing about Tencent, right? Is you can put out to the world, we're looking for solutions in this area. So if you come from what you like and you have a thesis about what you like and understand enough of the bits, you can start to put out what we call requests for proposals or requests for, proposals to a whole set of people and saying, we're going to run a contest. Who has the best stuff? Or we're going to fund the top 5 startups in this area. And you can put out, because you have such great reach to so many entrepreneurs in the world. That's what I would be doing and having it. So it's not random. It's driven by what you think your corporate and your business and your societal goals are. And then you have people coming to you with solutions. And then you can test the things that you think you know versus what they have. And you can get a much stronger palette of things to then figure out. And of course, as you said, some things are going to work and some things don't. My 200 and something companies that I've invested in, I think only 20 of them are going to be very successful. The other 200 are not going to be. They might be somewhat successful or they might die along the route. But it's those 20 that really matter, even if it's 10 out of 200 that matter. And that's what the venture game is. That's what the investment game is. That's what, whether you're a corporate or an independent. And that's also how a company has to think, is not everything they do is going to be a success. It should be a little bit better percentage than that. But from an investment point of view, it's not going to be as high as what we'd like it to be. And, our job all the day is to fail over and over and over as much as possible to find those winners. So in our world, we get money and we fail. But that's success because it leads us to the next investment. So I think being much more diligent about the sectors you want to be in, understanding it, getting other people to contribute, and then really focusing on them so you have some program to draw all those innovators in. Because believe me, anybody, and I've seen this, anybody who hears so-and-so is really thinks that this is a space that they need to drive, that word goes throughout that entire entrepreneurial community, and they go and figure out how to make proposals to address the solutions.
Just 2
Sure.
points. So, so I find, I bet Tony agrees with me. What's particularly challenging with climate is because if you're interested in climate, you're coming to this with an interest to make the world better. And we feel urgency because we see all the problems around us. So we're really frustrated by problems. And then what's particularly challenging is when you get approached by a team who agrees with you about the challenge, and they're explaining things like, this is why I'm building this company, because I agree with you, you're yes, the plastic problem, you're totally agreeing. And then you see the product, their solution, you're like, I don't know if I would do it that way. And then you get to know the team a little better, and you're like, gosh, I'm a little worried about this team. It's just not the right team for me. And I find this very challenging because when you are trying to invest for impact, you want a solution to succeed and you're eager to invest. You're really eager. And we have to also be systematic to back the right founders. In the US, Elon Musk is very famous for what he did with EVs, and many people didn't succeed with EVs. And how do you make sure you have the right product, the right solution, and the right team? And it's all important, because at the end of the day, you want that team to succeed against that goal. And there, so how do you avoid not falling in love with the problem statement? Tom and Tony, do you also suffer a little bit?
No, it's a great question. So the way I look at it is in the earliest days, let's say it's seed investment rounds, I'm looking for great teams who have some real technological advantage. They've been working on it. It's a research team or whatever, and it's just on the level of product. Okay, it's just ready to be productized. It's going to move from the lab into life, right? And working on them with that. I'm not trying to do science-only experiments. So I want to see a team that has science background and technology background, but knows how to get it to a product. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't become a product, it's just research. And it typically tells me that the team always wants to stay in research mode. In other words, they're not doing it at a university anymore or a company, but they just want to have their own company to do their own science experiments. So right there is where I see they better have great technology, but they better have a good idea of how they're going to go to market with it, how they're going to turn it into a product. Right. It's not perfect, but it's got to be in that seed area or that Series A area. Over time, and I'll do a couple of like I'll do a few things in the hydrogen space, and I have done, that might be competitive with each other, because I'm trying to get lots of signals, both on the technology side and on the customer side, to try to make sense of this problem set. And then what we normally do is sometimes one company falls away and the other one is the horse that you bet on for Series B, C, and D. But I am always like, does the team have that productization mindset, but they have enough of the technology and the licensing so they can turn it into something that matters? So that's the first thing. The second thing is multiple people in that space or around that space. Like, let me say, I have 3 companies now in the scope 1, doing analysis of scope 1 through 3 emissions targets for greenhouse gases and other wastes. I have 3 companies. They're not directly competitive, but they're in 3 different spaces, 3 different complementary ways of approaching the customer around the same topic. So I could learn to figure out what's going on, and then ultimately then invest in that one team that's doing it the right way, that has the right way to go to market with the right technology. So I think it's those 2 things. But again, I have to look to the team. The technology matters, but the team has to be able to turn it into a product and have to execute a go-to-market thing with marketing and sales and customer support and customer success, all of those things. So yes, it does boil down the team, but you do need to have the technology. Yes.
And I feel, though, to prepare to make impact in these climate spaces, everything you talked about earlier regarding being a leader and everything that goes into being a leader, all the proactive management approaches. I think that's so important for someone to be prepared to make impact in climate. And sometimes a leader who's a great leader at building solutions, they actually may have a bigger impact ultimately in climate than someone who's super, super passionate about climate, because they know how to organize teams and resources and get solutions out in the market to be successful at the end of the day, to make that impact, versus someone who maybe is weak in a lot of areas, but they're so passionate about that issue, whatever it may be. You gotta have those leadership skills.
Yes, you have to have the leadership skills, and you have to have the leadership skills, not just to be rah, 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 but actually to put one foot in front of the other and actually, harness a team and get something done. There's too many people I see who are so passionate, but they're blinded by the passion. And so one of the questions that I have for a lot of these climate companies that I invest in is not just who's the team and who's the tech, but because the whole planet needs it at once, more or less, I ask them, what is your plan to scale? And especially most of the things today are not software like we had in 2008, 2010, or whatever. They're not just bits only kind of companies. The way we're going to solve our climate crisis or environmental crisis is with atoms and bits. So I need to know that these people understand atoms. They understand how to scale atoms and make lots and replicate lots of atoms to make our problem, to make our problem go away. If they can't see technology, team, leadership, finance, and scale to some level, and they can talk that in the first, in the first meetings, even if it's just seed money or Series A, if they can't have an ability to understand that, and they're just passionate, we want to do the right thing, but they don't know how to articulate that other stuff, that's not a team I talk to. I say, go back, do your homework, actually read the book, make a real presentation, a real investor presentation, and come back to me when you've looked at most of the aspects of your solution, not just technology that can solve a problem, but how you're going to deploy that technology in a customer-friendly way at scale to solve the problem.
So we have a few more questions.
Really
the next one, sorry, David, go ahead.
Please continue. No, I think that was very helpful for people in the audience to really think about how to develop their careers to make that necessary impact in the market.
Okay. So we have a few more questions. And next one is from Dr. Lü Xuedu. He's a senior advisor of Carbon Neutrality Lab from Tencent. So welcome to Tencent Dialogue. Mr. Lü, please.
Yeah, thank you, Bonita. Really, really great pleasure to listen to the discussion, this knowledge sharing from David and Tony. Really a great idea. So I am the advisor Carbon Neutrality Lab, Tencent. Before I joined the Tencent in last May, I worked as the lead climate change specialist in Asian Development Bank. I also served the government of PRC in total for about 40 years. Now, I think we discussed a lot the climate change. So also the very excellent discussions on innovations and solutions to climate change. From my observation, that the adjacent climate change and also environmental issues, just also highlighted by Tony, that I think this will require actions from all fields, from all individuals. We can see now more attention actually is given to the large consumers of fossil fuels like coal power plants, industry sectors, and so on. Of course, this is not wrong, but it is not enough. Given we consider this carbon emissions and also carbon emission reductions and also adjusted environmental issues are people related, as also just a highlight by both of you. So it may be a great idea to consider the innovations and investment opportunities to attract people, to attract the individual and public, to attract them to be engaged in promoting this low carbon and clean lifestyle, and also promoting the zero emission production, all productions. So I think I believe that this will be very, very necessary. I just want to, or very curious to hear your views on this idea, and we appreciate very much to hear your thoughts or your insights. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question and the framing. When I think about this, and I think about the electric vehicle revolution, the EV revolution we have, that's consumer driven, right? We didn't get every car company in the world to change, incumbent car company to change, just because they all said, oh, we want to do the right thing. It was because the customers were saying, I want EVs. They're faster, they're quieter, they're cheaper, they're easier to maintain, these kinds of things. So the more we can get great solutions that involve the customers, the end customers who can make a choice one by one, that's powerful, right? So we're going to need to do things like, you know, fix cement and fix steel and these other kinds of production things, materials. But we have to be able to nudge consumers to make the right decisions. So to me, when I look at something like when you're buying fashion, the more things where you create a nutritional guide, and actually we have this in Build. At the back of Build, the book, and the very last page actually has a nutritional guide of where everything came from, where the paper came from, the glue, literally where it came from, and then what to do at end of life. Will it hurt the planet or whatever? It's a nutritional guide, just like your food has a nutritional guide of what's healthy and what's not healthy in your food. The same thing goes with our products. I think we need more transparency, and companies like Tencent can bring that kind of standard transparency to customers. So when they make a choice, because they won't know whether this piece of clothing or that piece of clothing is better for the planet. But if Tencent was able to take its e-tailing functions and things and put the right kind of nutritional guide next to it and say, this is what you're buying, it just doesn't look cool, but it's great for the environment. The more you can nudge people to do the right choice, which will then drive the supply chains to change, saying, oh, more people are buying this because it's green, you know, and good for the planet. And this one is not. And so more people will switch to that. Are they fashion, or are they, how many of these garments were thrown away last year because they got it wrong? Well, I'm not working with a company that's throwing away things and burning things. I want to work with somebody who doesn't generate waste. I want to make sure he's making a garment better. So I hope that through the transparency of software systems and being able to, like we said, scope 1 through 3 CO2 emissions or other kinds of waste things, and we make those as labels that are attached to these products, people will make intelligent choices of what they're buying and know that it will be better for the planet. I hope one day soon we're going to have a carbon economy where those externalities are priced into each of the products we buy, and so that it will be natural to see, yeah, this product that's greener for the planet might be slightly more expensive, but this other one has so many carbon taxes and so many other taxes associated because it's bad for the environment that we're going to choose this one. So my hope is we're going to have that kind of thing over the next 10 years to allow not just governments to drive change in large industries, but consumers can drive change just like they did in the electric vehicle market.
David, do you want to add something?
I've just got a couple quick ideas. That's great, Tony. I'm okay to be a little bit controversial with this. I've been saying this since 2017 at We Summit and other events, but I think the single greatest thing someone can do, now whether or not they want to do it is another question, but the single greatest thing they can do is reduce their meat intake, their consumption and eating of meat. I think meat it eats a lot of greenhouse gases. It's very pollutive. You can imagine all the waste flowing from the livestock fields into the water sources and other things.
And the methane.
Maybe you're not willing to stop eating the methane. I mean, it just goes on and on. And, you know, please, you know, search online if you're interested in this topic. Why would someone say the biggest I can do is meat? Because there's so many ideas and evidence there about it. But the thing is, even if you're willing to skip meat at one meal or one day, what's very interesting is the way meat tends to make itself into almost every single thing that we eat. And then when you start approaching it like, because I became, vegan basically, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I go to China and I make a big deal because it's like, I don't eat meat. And then it's like, well, we can't give the guy any food because there's meat in that. There's meat in everything. It's like, it's 西兰花, it's broccoli. 那不是西兰花吗？为什么有肉在西兰花里头? Oh, we always like to put a little pork into the broccoli. It's like, it's a broccoli dish. Can't the broccoli just be broccoli, And the meat sneaks in everywhere. It used to not be this way in China. We all know that. Back in the 70s, the amount of meat eaten, it was like 1 kilo per year per person. Now, I'm not saying we go back to those days, but you could see how much meat. It's like 1 kilo a day probably for many Chinese people. Not a year, a day now for many people. So if you can, as a consumer, the question is, do I need meat this meal? I'm gonna do what that guy said. I'm not gonna have meat for dinner, and maybe I don't eat it for lunch. If we all reduce in the aggregate, we take a lot of pressure off of ecosystems, environmental systems. That's the first thing. The second thing, just don't waste. You all know when the air conditioning 空调太高了，就是调得太高了，在家里 when you're at home, too much air conditioning, you're wasting lights. Okay. Just turn it down. This is what Tony used to do. Make that easy, because I know this problem drives him crazy. He built a whole famous company around it that's still helping to solve this problem. And maybe Nest needs to be in China to make this easier. But say you don't have the solution available. That's not an excuse. It's frustrating. It frustrated Tony immensely, but you can turn it down. You can turn off the lights and then let the technologies please help us. But this is something immediate you could do today. The third thing is just, as when you buy something, you have a chance to support a good company, as Tony was describing, or support a not so thoughtful company. And you can really support companies that are trying to make a difference. And you can ask, you can look.
Okay, so now we have
Okay,
some
so
questions.
I want to just finish. I want to finish up on David's thing. So David, I appreciate all your comments about making the right choices. So David, you talked about making the right choices as a consumer. I fully agree with that. And I just want to emphasize one more thing. What I always tell people that I meet, when it comes to the climate crisis, you can't be apathetic. You can't be indifferent about it. You're either part of the climate crisis problem or you're part of the climate crisis solution. And if you say, it doesn't matter to me, that means you're part of the problem. So each of us as individuals, as families, we have to figure out if we're part of the problem or we're part of the solution. So the more you start thinking about how you want to be part of the solution with the choices you make, the things you do at work, the companies you work for, how you do the work at work, it doesn't mean you're going to all go work for, power companies or something like that, but how you do your work, even at Tencent, how you recycle, how you conserve energy and not waste food. If you can do that in each of your decisions, you're part of the solution. If you're totally going, I don't care what the planet, what happens to the planet, I'm going to make whatever is, and I'm going to eat my 1 kilogram of meat each day. You are part of the problem, and you are not helping future generations, and you have to acknowledge you're part of the problem. Otherwise, it's much better to be part of the solution and trying to make the right choices for yourself personally and your family, as well as trying to push your company that you work for to be greener and greener and greener, because we are not just consumers of products. We are also people who can drive businesses to make changes, to do the right thing for the planet. So be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Be the change.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
now we have some questions from the media. The first one is from FT Chinese. Ms. Ge Yang, yes, please.
Hi, hello, Tony. It's so nice to have meeting with you and listen to your insights, which is really give me a lot of valuable thoughts. So I would like to give you a brief introduction about myself. So I'm from FT Chinese, which is the Financial Times Chinese language website. We provide news and information to Chinese business executives and decision makers. So my question is, since your book, the title of the book is Make the Things Worth Making. So I would like to know, for entrepreneurs, what kind of creation can be really survived, and what kind of innovation will be more valuable? Thank you.
Okay, sure. Hi, nice to meet you. Just so you know, the FT in the UK, in England, actually selected Build as one of their summer reads. So it's nice to be talking to the FT yet again. In regards to thank you. So in regards to innovation, which ones matter, or which one matters the most? To me, I see innovations everywhere. There's all kinds of problems to be solved. The ones that are the most important to solve are the ones that are most important to you, okay? Too many people chase the money, or where's the biggest opportunity, instead of chasing what they're most passionate about and want to learn about and think they can contribute and add the most value to. So as far as I'm concerned, any entrepreneur who's trying to build something, they should build something that they really want to exist in this world, that they're passionate about, that they believe it, because they need to get other people to believe in it. If they're just following the money and they see innovation happening, let's say it's crypto something, and they're following the money and they just want to go after crypto because they see everybody making money in it, but they really don't care about crypto, they care about money, that's not a great place to be. Chasing the money is never a good place. So go for the technologies and the businesses that intrigue you, that you're curious about, that you think you can add value. And those are the technologies that are most powerful, not the ones that are, you may think are powerful, but you have no real love for or any interest in, just because you're going after the money.
David, do you want to add something? David? Okay, then second question we have from Science and Technology Daily. Ms. Cao Xiuying, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your great share. As we know, during 1990s, that was golden age for innovations in the area of internet. Many internet companies emerged, and some of them become big techs that have changed the lives of people. Now, in 2020s, given the challenges of climate change and opportunities that come with, do you think there will be new generation of big techs that will emerge and can address climate changes and change the lives of people in a positive way? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the question. Yes, of course. Look at what Tesla's done. Tesla is building battery factories. They are building EVs. They are creating they're doing power walls for, energy storage, solar panels. We already see one huge company, and this was second or third most, valuable person on the planet, was all created out of environmental technologies, fundamentally. I think because the world has to change so dramatically, and we're going through infrastructure 2.0 or industrial revolution 2.0, there are going to be many, many more influential companies and leaders of those companies that are going to be created over the next decade and 2 and even 3 decades. If we think about the largest companies that existed up till just maybe 10 years ago, those were energy companies. All of those energy companies were created in the late 1800s, 1900s, and were beginning, and were the head of their industries for 100 years. The companies that are creating the green revolution, the climate solutions, they could be the next 100-year companies as well, dominating the stock markets. Because just like energy or fossil fuel energy was essential to the last 100, 150 years on the planet, green energy and materials are going to be essential to the next 150, 300, 500 years on the planet. These companies could be maybe around longer than the fossil fuel energy companies of the past. So for sure, we're going to see lots of leaders and lots of new companies leading the way when they get it right, combining the right customer and customer solutions with the right things for the planet. They are going to create enormous value for their employees, for their customers, as well as their shareholders.
David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would. I think what's very interesting about these kind of, let's call them, you know, climate related companies. We call them that now, but really they're just doing essential industrial functions, industrial processes much more intelligently and almost always cost effectively than the incumbents. So the incumbents are the incumbents, incumbents mean they're the big dominating companies of today. They're big because they've had 50, 60 years to build up. They met the needs of society with energy. Of course we need energy, of course we need agriculture, but they've been using bad practices, to be honest, not good for the planet, a lot of waste, not really ideal even for our health sometimes, when you think about air pollution or things like this that are the result. And what, you know, humans, we just wanted to meet our fundamental needs, and we used the technology that was available. Seemed like a good idea 100 years ago at the time when someone came up with some of these ideas, but when you scale them up massively to now almost 8 billion people on the planet and globally all over the world, they have these terrible impacts on the planet, on their communities, sometimes with pollution. So the companies now that are coming out are going to replace those terrible practices often with much better practices that still meet the fundamental needs of people. Tony mentioned materials, you know, cement, steel, textiles. We need clothes, we need steel for buildings and everything else, right? So these companies will, those that adopt the smarter technologies, not just because they're greener, but usually they're much more efficient. They save on costs. They're not wasting, right? They're going to have a similar market position, if not even bigger, than the large, massive incumbents that we see on the stock markets today. And hopefully, some of those big, massive companies are going to do the transition themselves. They've got a lot of assets. They've got a lot of resources. Maybe they acquire a few startups to help them accelerate. But definitely, we're talking about, you know, the biggest companies in, because there's a role for tech in the way that it didn't have a role for like textiles before necessarily. We get to also participate, and entrepreneurs get to participate in industries where maybe it was assumed that it was off limits. You know, like, okay, what do I know about textiles? I shouldn't be in textiles. I don't know how to make a shirt. You know, why am I getting involved? Well, with AI, maybe I could reduce 40% of the waste. I can make the whole process more efficient. Now we've got computer scientists getting into the game, which is really exciting. The reason why they're getting in the game is because they're driving efficiency. They're bringing down costs. They're accelerating the productivity. So it's a very exciting time for someone who maybe thought, I don't know anything about textiles. I've been making apps for 20 years. What do I know? No, you might have a huge amount to offer because of the way that new technologies can drive efficiency. So absolutely, this is a massively exciting revolution right now. We have to take the risks that we're having, the way G, you know, the way and the G, we have to emphasize the Ji Hui, the opportunity in the word crisis, as you all know. Tony, there's the word crisis, 2 letters, Wei in Ji means crisis. The last character is Ji Hui, it means opportunity. So you always have to find the opportunity in a crisis, and hopefully I didn't say that improperly. So anyways.
I love that analogy, and I love how that works, because look at this. We created a climate-friendly company called Nest, right, to save energy and do it in a dramatic way. And that was it was a huge company. It still is, you know, and it's providing things. But we didn't know anything about heating and cooling. We didn't know anything about, you know, the whole market. We knew how to build electronic devices and do software, and we applied ourselves to the problem and brought all kinds of people from the industry, that existing industry, as well as new people in, and we rebooted it, and we could change it. So don't think that you have to go to a large company to change an industry anymore. You can actually change it with small companies and get it going. So that's why, to me, Build, the book, as well as all the people creating things, don't be afraid by these other markets where you might not know anything. They're desperate for the technology resources. They wish they had the technology experience. The people who have the technology and have those tools and those resources, those are ones who are going to take out the incumbents, because the incumbents don't understand the technology. The people in there have been maintainers for years, not leaders. They don't know what this is. They wish they could do it, but now new companies can come up and unseat them. It's amazing to watch, and we're going to see it all day long. Look at electric vehicles. The #1 electric vehicle company in the world had nothing to do with vehicles over the last 100 and 120 years when vehicles were all created. There is massive upheaval coming, and it's going to be generated mostly by the small companies that grow into these large multinational companies over the next years. Look at what Tencent did in 22 years or 24 years, right? It's going to be the same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
We need
last
people to get out there.
question. Okay, so last question from CSDN, Chinese Software Development Network. Mr. Xu Weilong, please.
Okay. Hi, Tony. It's great to have this opportunity to talk to you. And we are a Chinese IT developers community, so I'm asking about this question about the developer. So as you just mentioned, and we can also find in your book that you mentioned that the individual contributor and the developing team can not only focusing on the day-to-day work, right? So they may also look up and look around and maybe give more attention to sales and manufacturing and marketing, etc. So can you just give an example about how did you apply this in your team or in your work experiences?
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a great topic. So a few ways. First, I would encourage anyone who was in my team to go out and talk to other teams. So like, let's say it was engineering. I would have the engineers go sit on the customer support line, and they would listen in to support calls about the product they were working on to learn more about what the users were having problems with the products. Why were they calling in? How could they fix it? And they would have to sit there for a week listening and trying to understand what the difficulties were the customer, so they could come back to their team, their engineering team, and say, we're going to solve it and solve some of these problems, right? You really have to get people immersed into other people's jobs to really get them to understand how they can make their jobs better. So customer support can work on other problems instead of these normal, these problems that happen very often for users. Let's get rid of those and design them out so customer support can work on the next set of problems. So one is just making teams work together. The other thing that I would do was that I would have lunches, special lunches, where two different teams would get together and they'd have a lunch. And it wouldn't be, software engineering or hardware engineering. It would be sales with software engineering together. And they would have a lunch, and then we get to meet each other and learn about what the problems are, what their solutions are, and how they might be able to help each other. So they start to build a personal relationship. It's not just sales and engineering getting together. It's this engineer and this salesperson getting and making friends and maybe wanting to go out to work afterwards. And who knows where that happens. So creating relationships between people, not just teams. The other thing I would do is I would also have, events where sending people out to different teams, where teams would have these social events and working together. The other thing that I would do is I would make sure that we would move people around between teams. So, sometimes the engineers would go work for another team, or we'd have product marketing come work with engineering. So literally having people sharing their roles for a little while, not a long time, but just enough to get to live in their world, to understand what these other functions are, how they talk, what's important to them, who are their customers, those kinds of things. So it's really about getting people, not just to talk to other people, but getting people to work together and really see through each other's eyes and get to build relationships so that they can go and work together beyond the normal, the normal meeting schedule, but have relationships outside of the work schedule, the day-to-day.
Okay, tech for good is widely accepted by the whole society. Now the environment is becoming more and more complicated. So how technology company insist on doing the right things? So in conclusion, what's your suggestion, Tony?
What's my suggestion?
Yeah,
in conclusion, my suggestion is right now, the world has incredible opportunity for large businesses, small businesses, and entrepreneurs to go after the climate crisis, our waste crisis, our environmental crisis at all levels, It requires technology. We're going to do this with not just atoms, like we created our Industrial Revolution 1.0 was mostly atoms. Then we had the Information Revolution 1.0 with bits. We are now going to combine information and industry together, bits plus atoms, to make the Industrial Revolution 2.0. Every single industry will become bits plus atoms, efficiency driven, smarter ways, and we as builders can go after those opportunities in any form, any fashion, and it's going to be the biggest transition we've ever seen on the planet since the early 1900s when Industrial Revolution 1.0 took off. We have the chance to remake the planet. We are the builders. We are empowered to do it right. Make sure you're part of the solution and not part of the problem, personally and professionally. And we can change this world and get past these existential crises that the humans created, previous humans created for us. Now let's use this as an opportunity to make the planet better and to prosper together.
David, what's the suggestion, please?
I think that was really well said, Tony, and thank you so much for spending time with us today. I would add, I think if we can all get aligned that we need to re-architect our Earth, as we've been saying, or industrialization 2.0. In the book, we call it 重构地球. If we can agree that there's so many good reasons to do that. There's the challenges ahead of us because of climate. There's also just the pure opportunity to do things smartly, drive profits. There's like every reason to embrace the moment. Then I think we need strategic cooperation. And unfortunately, cooperation has actually been becoming more difficult around the world. And this across the groups of people that maybe sometimes work together and sometimes don't. It could be, of course, between countries. It could be between governments and companies. There's always the problem. You're maybe polluting steel or cement. You have a problem, but then again, society is depending on you to deliver steel and cement. So on one hand, everyone wants more and more cement. On the other hand, everyone's saying you're polluting the planet. How do we actually agree to accelerate our cooperation? There's so many ideas that would come from a startup or a technology company like ours. And governments know they have a big challenge in front of them: food security, water security, energy security. Could they be more open to working with the technology companies, both large and small? What are the hundreds or thousands of ways you could do that? And we need to get really good at building the cooperation muscle, because just everyone trying to do it on their own, being very willing to work with each other, a bit suspicious of each other, maybe sometimes very suspicious of each other. We're just missing opportunities every day to tackle these really massive challenges. So to me, it's like fundamentally, learning about how to cooperate. And I know, I've been with this company a long time. We are willing to do that. I know Tony is definitely kind of person willing to do that, but it's something that I think, we're all going to have to cultivate that muscle over time, and being more open in how to think about how we can accelerate progress by working with each other. So I think that's probably the big one in my view at the end of the day.
David, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. We are not going to solve our environmental crisis issues if we're not working together, especially China and the rest of the world. We need to work together to find these solutions. Whether the technology comes out of the Western world, comes out of China, wherever it is, we need to scale up the manufacturing of it, because there's a lot of atoms here, people, not just bits. Yeah. And we need to work together. We know where the global factory is of the world. It's in China. It's undisputable. It's indisputable. You have to understand that China is going to help us solve the atoms problem that we have on this planet. We need to work together to be able to change it, because it's not going to be us versus them, because we don't have all the resources. None of us have all the resources. We have to work together if we're going to solve this existential crisis.
Yeah.
In China, technology has been called the first productive force. So with today's episode, we discussed the tremendous potential of technology in solving global challenges. Tony introduced his new book. He also told us his secret of leadership. David shared his view on climate change, and he also suggested on how to use technology in the area of food, energy, and water. By the way, David speaks perfect Chinese, so he explained crisis and opportunity to us. Very impressive. So thank you for joining us today, gentlemen, and thank you for watching.
拜拜，谢谢。
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It was awesome.